And hello, and welcome to the first and inaugural episode of Discography Discussion, where I go through a deep dive of the studio albums of certain artists and I kind of give my opinions on them and critique them in what little knowledge of music I know. And if you can't see, today we're talking about Linkin Park. Now, I know recently that Chester Bennington did pass away, and that was very sad for everybody. But I'm not going to let that hinder anything. I'm going to continue to talk about these albums as if he were alive, or as if it just kind of doesn't matter in a way. But it did suck when it happened, and I know. But regardless, let's get into it with the first album. And the first album is Hybrid Theory, which came out in 2000, is 37 minutes long, and has only about 12 tracks. So I'd call it a pretty short album. At least if you're listening casually or maybe going somewhere, you could probably get through it pretty easily. And honestly, that trend goes through with most of Linkin Park's albums. They're not very long, and they don't have a lot of tracks. Later on, they do start to get a little bit longer, but not by much, but whatever. Hybrid Theory, probably everyone's favorite and probably everyone's main entrance into who Linkin Park was when they started. Of course, hit songs like In the End and Crawling and whatever. Um, I like the album a lot. I liked it when I was a kid, and I still like it now. I think it's a fine album, but I wouldn't go as far as saying my favorite, because maybe now that I'm older, I kind of hear the similarities to like Limp Bizkit, which is not a very good thing, and yeah, sorry. And also, in the end, just kind of wore out for me because, listening to it as much as I could as a kid and then kind of not wanting to ever listen to it again. Yeah. Anyway, Hybrid Theory. I'd honestly say if it's your favorite, sure. But otherwise, personally, there's better out there for me. But that's where the next album comes in. Meteora, 2003, 36-minute album and 13 tracks. So a little bit shorter technically, but with one more track than the last one. Anyway, my favorite album of all time. Even after listening to all of the albums afterwards, still my favorite album. Every song on here is just amazingly good. And my favorite song, of course, being Breaking the Habit. Ah, Meteora. Ah, my favorite album. And honestly, the best mix of their, like, hard rocking beginnings, like in Hybrid Theory, and their mix of sort of becoming this emotional band, like they did later on with the next album and the albums afterwards. And honestly, it fits really well. I really like it. And then comes Minutes to Midnight. Yeah, probably the one album I'd say I like the least. I'd honestly go as far as saying their worst album too. Not worst in the sense that the music isn't good or that what they did here wasn't good. It's just kind of confused. It sounds like they're still trying to be a part of their old selves and then moving on to this newer version of themselves where everything's a lot more electronic and not so heavily on instrumentals and also trying to be like way more emotional and touching their softer sides. Honestly, that could have worked if they had figured out a way to do it. When you listen to the album, it's kind of confused and it feels like tracks are places where they shouldn't be. And the other thing is, it's kind of like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Am I supposed to be sad? Or am I supposed to be like angry? Or what is going on? Yeah, probably their worst album. And their, I believe, third longest album? Yeah, 43 minutes. Not a really fun ride. Anyway, next album. A Thousand Suns, or just another weirdly confused album that sort of starts to get things right, but still not their greatest. A Thousand Suns came out in 2010, 47 minutes being their longest album, at least studio album, I should say, and at 15 tracks, their most amount of tracks in an album. Although technically, all the other albums before this and after have more tracks depending on where you live. Like, I think Hybrid Theory and Meteora have 16 tracks, both in Japan for some, well, I would say weird reason, but actually it makes a lot more sense when you know Linkin Park. But, uh, yeah. Um, Again, kind of the same problems as Minutes to Midnight. Although I would say it's definitely a lot better here because at least they start to get their track listing a little better and putting certain songs where they need to be, like next to other songs, so that the emotion fits, and then moving on to a different mood. But again, not a great album, mostly because of that. It still does have a little bit of the confusing what is the emotion I'm supposed to feel, which isn't a very great feeling. It's what I would call whiplash. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Whiplash is when the mood and emotion of something just changes like rapidly without a real transition into the next emotion. So it'd be like if I were listening to like Daft Punk and then immediately I switched the song to like heavy metal death Meshuggah or something. It would be like, whoa, what's going on? I thought I was listening to dance music. And honestly, these two albums kind of have that problem of not really knowing where they want to be or what emotion they want to emote, I guess. It just kind of is like, well, I want it to be sad, but angry, but also a little bit of happy, but also a little bit of betrayed and a little bit of depressed. It's like, which one is it, guys? Anyway, next album. Living Things came out in 2012, 36 minutes, being, I think, the second shortest again, and 12 tracks. So, a lot like their original albums again, but forgettable. I I don't really remember having any real connection to the album, or I don't really. It was a good album. It definitely fixed a lot of the problems that was wrong with 1,000 Suns and Minutes to Midnight, of getting the emotion right through the entire album, and honestly putting all the tracks in places where they belong. But at the same time, it was okay. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't what I wanted. And I know that I'm probably like a lot of other people that were like, I want the old Linkin Park. And yeah, I did. But I can also understand at some point that they do need to move on. And I did respect that. But here, while it does start to touch on the old, it does also touch on the newer stuff in a really good way. And I'd say that if you like this album, then it's definitely a good pick because it's definitely an album that works in the sense of being old Linkin Park, new Linkin Park, and just finding that perfect blend in between each other. But at the same time, I don't think it's the best of that. I think that honor goes to this album, The Hunting Party. Now, just to kind of backtrack a little bit, when I was done with, I think, Minutes to Midnight and moving on to 1,000 Suns, I had to take a break for like at least a day or two because I was just like, oh my god, this is gonna suck. I can't do this anymore. These albums suck. And then I moved on to 1,000 Suns. Again, I was kind of like, I need to take a break, but I didn't. I did keep going on. Once Living Things was over, I felt a little bit better, but I said, honest to myself, I said, this honestly doesn't seem like it's gonna get any better. And then I was proven wrong by The Hunting Party. I would say my second favorite album. Came out in 2014, 45 minutes with 12 tracks. Little bit on the long side as far as length in minutes, but not a lot of tracks either. But honestly, a really, really good album. It's definitely the perfect blend of their old selves and their new sort of emotional side that I really like. And I do understand that in Hybrid Theory and Meteora, they did touch a lot on their emotions, I should say. And it worked. It worked really nicely. But I think The Hunting Party is the bomb, if you will. It's perfect. If you haven't listened to this album, I absolutely recommend it. Even if you haven't listened to anything in between, I'd say definitely listen to this one. It's amazingly hard rocking as soon as you start and all the way to the finish. And surprisingly, Mike Shinoda has his own little bit like he did back in the day with Meteora and Hybrid Theory. And like I said, it's my second favorite album. My god. And then finally comes One More Light, which came out in 2017, last year, technically. 35 minutes, so not a very long album. Honestly, one of the shorter ones, and 10 tracks. Actually, the shortest album out of all of theirs, with only 10 tracks. Um, Obviously, the last album that we're going to be seeing from Linkin Park with Chester Bennington, of course. And I absolutely cannot stand this album whatsoever. I hate every song on this album, and I was dreading it the entire time. Um, it's just way too different of a tone for them, and it just goes in so many weird directions that I don't like. It it just takes everything that was going right with like Hunting Party and Living Things, and it just threw it all away. Like it didn't even consider it, and just was like, let's be really sad, emotional, and just like it just. Oh, I hate this album so much. Um, if you like this album, I mean, power to you. Maybe you find something in it that you like that I don't like, and maybe I'm just a little too connected to the original Linkin Park to like really honestly let go of it and move on to newer things. But man, I can't stand this album. Um, and I know that it's the last album we're going to be seeing with Chester Bennington, like I said in the beginning, and honestly, that that sucks because at least the one thing I've always said with Linkin Park, and this is a little more recent before I started listening to all the albums, was I may not be keeping in touch with them, but I understand that Chester and Mike Shinoda and the rest of the band are all keeping with their sort of emotions and doing what they want to do, which honestly for most bands is kind of hard. A lot of bands have to kind of transform and become something new in order to stay relevant, whereas Linkin Park never felt like that. It always kind of felt like they were doing what they wanted to do and not what people expected of them. And for that, I honestly can't give them any more shit because if you can continue to do what you want to do and make money off of it, perfect. And I know there's a saying that if you work the job you want, you never feel like you're working a day in your life or however it goes, but that's a lie because then that means you're not doing anything. And honestly, I feel like the band Linkin Park did honestly feel like what they were doing was what they wanted to do, but at the same time, they felt that they had to put the work in, and honestly, that makes me happy. So, my final thoughts are Linkin Park. I mean, I honestly didn't expect a lot less from them, and I wasn't really disappointed to be completely honest. I knew that I wouldn't like a lot of the middle albums, but knowing that going into it, at the same time knowing that they were doing what they wanted to do, and I'm totally okay with that. And honestly, like I said, if you like any of the albums that I didn't like, power to you. You probably hear something in it that I don't hear, and maybe I'm a little too connected to old Linkin Park to really ever let go. Truly. Um, but I mean, that's all I have to say, honestly. Um, I don't know. Yeah, only a total of what, 6 albums, 7 albums? Yeah, honestly, all pretty short. So if you ever decide to listen to them, go ahead. They're definitely worth listening to on like maybe a car ride home, a long car ride home, and to be honest, if you were on a road trip, you could probably get through all of these albums. Now, I know there's a lot of other albums in between that aren't studio albums, like LPs, EPs, and some of their weirder remix albums from the beginning, back in the days of Hybrid Theory. And I honestly don't feel like going through those, and I don't think I ever will. But hey, whatever. So, if you obviously were paying attention, this episode was a little late. Um, I would definitely say go ahead and follow my Twitter for more updates, or if not follow, at least look, on the Twitter. I'll definitely keep any updates about the show pinned to the top of my tweets so you can just see it really easily and not have to scroll through a whole bunch of retweets and whatnot. Um, but yeah, if you want to keep updated with the show, it'll be there. And I'll see you for the next episode in a couple weeks. I think 2. I skip next week and then I go to the other week. Anyway, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give it a thumbs down, I guess. Wow, I had a brain fart there. Yeah, you know what? Just give it a dislike for that. Ugh. If you want to continue to see more of this series, go ahead and subscribe. And if you have any artists that you want to recommend, go ahead and put it in the comments down below. I'd definitely be willing to listen to any artist that anyone puts in the comments below. I'm definitely looking for a lot more discographies to go around, especially considering that I might have to listen to a 25 album discography. Save me. Anyway, but regardless, thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time. If you didn't, go ahead and tell me what I could change. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching.